thank you for that warm welcome. It's always nice to get a warm welcome in your old hometown. And I was just looking to see if she's here, young woman with Lutheran Services, and
or the Lutheran Church.
They're the Lutheran Church, and they're launching a summer sandwich program to provide food for needy children. And I was reminded of the origins of, in no small measure, my interest in politics. I remember the 1960 election of John Kennedy and his inaugural, and being so inspired about wanting to do something for my country. And I had no idea what that meant, but I knew I wanted to be a part of that. I had no idea it would lead to a career in politics. Having said that, talking this morning about the school lunch program, I was reminded of the first instance where, in my own case, I saw political action working and getting something done. Johnny Pruth and I organized a strike at the Franklin School cafeteria. And our demands were an extra helping, you know, especially for us growing young athletes, and a publishing of the menu, because it wasn't that good. And if we knew, you know, which days the bad food was being delivered, we'd know when to bring lunch. And we succeeded. Now, Johnny went on to become a billionaire because he devoted his life to business, and he's still my very dearest and best friend. And well, I did spend 32 years in business. I spent far more measure of my time in public life and public service. So I have no regrets, and I make no apologies, and I'm just grateful for the opportunity to serve. As Beth was pointing out, you know, I served for, well, actually about 12 years in my youth, and then left politics voluntarily. I pointed that out. I was actually on Jack Anderson, so you say Jack Anderson, you know, I have to be an older crowd here to know who the heck I'm talking about. But you know who I'm talking about. Had me on his list of the 10 most respected members. I point that out only to point out that when I was leaving a full-time career in politics, I was doing so voluntarily as opposed to many others who were leaving from various penitentiaries around the country. But I continued, you know, 32 years in business and community service, and in a wide variety of capacities in the community service field. In my township, I'm president emeritus of the Central Lakes College Foundation with scholarship money, a lot of things like that. I have my own export trading company. I do a little business all over the world. People ask me what I sold, and I said, well, everything except for drugs and guns, which is where all the real money was. And then we built a sawmill and a pallet factory, and my kids are still running that today and doing quite well with it. We have a sawmill in Rayburn, and one in Emily, and the pallet factory in Emily, and they're doing quite well with that. So was it 2 years ago? By the way, I want to acknowledge our Republican tractor here in the back of the room. One of the things about government and politics is nowadays is you have someone following you everywhere you go with a camera, with the purpose of trying to catch you saying something that perhaps you should have said, or yawning in a grotesque way. So they can be used in the next TV commercial against you. And I introduce him and I welcome him. I just want you to know he's not my guy. So, I don't go around with my own camera guy trying to see how good I look. So welcome to the meeting here today. So in many respects, you know, I did back into this. I tried to recruit any one of a number of younger state representatives and senators and mayors throughout the district. And as I've always been involved in government and politics behind the scenes. I like to say they all proved they were smarter than I am because they all declined. And it turned on me and said, "You run." And quite frankly, that came as a big surprise. Something I had never imagined or anticipated. And even though like I said, I ended up backing into it, I could not have been more grateful and more enthusiastic about and embracing that, because it's something I never thought would happen. But I got to tell you, after an additional 32 years in business, in community service, and doing domestic business and international business, I feel so much better prepared today than at any point in my life. And my children are growing up. They always remain your child, and I want to thank all of you for your prayers for Catherine as she's struggling with her situation. Good news, they found a targeted therapy for her, and it seems to be working. So, we always remain hopeful, and we've got some good hard physical evidence to substantiate that hope. And I'm just certain all the goodwill and all the good wishes and all the prayers that people have sent have played an important role. It certainly means a lot to the family, and it means a lot to her as well. So we want to thank you for that. It's been kind of a tough year. I see David and Cordy here. They lost a grandson here 2 years ago from spinal meningitis, and her daughter Leah had spinal meningitis last fall. So unfortunately for her, she was a survivor, but Crosby Medical Center recognized it immediately, and they were immediately able to provide the kind of treatment that she needed, that unfortunately Dave and Cordy's grandson did not until it was too late. So Leah is still with us. And, sometimes we get frustrated about the lack of progress on a wide variety of issues. But we need to remind ourselves of a lot of the great progress that has been made. When I look around a room here, we need to remind ourselves that in our grandparents' time, the life expectancy in this country was like about 47. And in a little over a generation, it's practically doubled. And a big part of that is a lot of health, environmental, safety, research, medical advances that have taken place that are saving lives every day. And the doubling of, Homo sapiens have been on the earth for millions of years. And in a little over one generation, we doubled the life expectancy. So a lot of us as a nation, and a lot of us here in this room, we've got a lot to be grateful for the great progress that's been made. So with all that said, I'm here to talk about the growing income inequalities. And the simple truth is, and it's not hyperbole, it's fact. The simple truth is the rich are getting richer in degrees unparalleled. And the poor are getting poorer. We have more poor people in this country that, at any time in recent decades. And the middle class is getting crushed. And those are just the hard facts. Those are just the hard realities. And another truth is that there is, I guess I'd have to call it a de facto war, against poor people and against middle class Americans. I call it de facto because it's certainly not declared. And quite frankly, it's really not about wealth. It's not about success. It's not like the primary beneficiaries of that war deliberately want these things to happen. It's really all about greed and the consequences of greed. So, I think it's important that we make that distinction. It's not about wealth. It's not about success. It's not about opportunity. Those are good things that we all want. And we want our children and our children's children and our families and our friends and our neighbors to aspire to and achieve. It's really all about unparalleled greed that takes place. and everything has its consequences. And as the upper 1% in this country consumes a greater and greater amount of the wealth and the income that it is producing. I just read yesterday now, Wall Street just paid itself $28 billion in bonuses, you know, for the year. And that's down, or that's up from the $27 billion that were paid, you know, last year. When, you know, 99% of all the income that's been produced since the last Great Recession, which started in 08 or 09, you know, 99% of all the new income that's been produced has gone to the benefit of the upper 1%. When, you know, the upper 1% has enjoyed, you know, more income acceleration than the rest of the 50% all combined. It's like, wow. When the upper 10% have consumed, you know, almost 90% of all the new wealth that's been created, you know, something is wrong. Something is fundamentally wrong. And we're seeing conservative economists and as well as liberal economists saying, you know, this is not good. This is not healthy. This does not bode well for the victims of that grief, nor does it bode well for the future of us as a nation or as a society. And it's something we have to own up to. It's something that we have to face up to. And it's something that we've got to be prepared to do something about it and to do what we can do to fix it. Because these things don't just happen naturally, okay? And I've tried to convince people over the years that anytime you go out and you collect several $1 trillion in income, and then you turn around and you spend several $1 trillion in income, you are distributing wealth. And that's not a matter of philosophy. It's just a matter of fact. Because who you collect it from and where you spend it back out determines who has what. So this phenomenon that we are seeing and we are witnessing is in fact new. It is in fact new. I see Bob Lupgard here, one of the great heroes of the greatest generation was Omaha Beach in World War II. God bless you, Bob. But you know, that generation, they understood it. You know, they got it. You know, that's the generation that insisted on living wages. You know, that's the generation that secured pension benefits for us. That's the generation that created health care benefits. That's the generation that created the largest middle class that any nation in the world had ever witnessed. You know, that's the generation that made us a model that the world aspired to be like. And I'm here to tell you, as someone who spent a fair amount of time as a business person and as a diplomat in the world community, there's still a lot of goodwill out there toward the American people. They still admire our creativity, our ingenuity, our ability to do things and to get things done in our freedom. But I tell you what, they're questioning, you know, who we are and where we're going today, and for good reason, because we're questioning it ourselves. And the time has come to own up to it and to be honest about it, and to remind ourselves that, you know, for those to whom much is given, much is expected. I had the benefit of a mother who sat me down at the table and said, you know, Richard, you got good health, and your dad's got a good job, and you live in a nice community, and you got good schools, and you got lots of nice role models in the neighborhood for you, And guess what? You didn't have a darn thing to do with any of it. But for the grace of God, you know, there be you. You could have been one of those who were left out. You could have been one of those that were forgotten. You could have been one of those that were left behind, but you weren't. And then in keeping with that same wonderful old biblical notion that for those to whom much is given, much is expected. So to be able to have an opportunity to go back to our nation's capital and at least try my best to be able to give back in some measure or degree commensurate with what me and my generation have received is a wonderful opportunity. And I tell you, every time I walk into a room full of men and women like I'm witnessing here today, many of you I've known, some of you all my life. It's like a shot of energy. It's like a rush of energy. It's a strengthening of resolve to try to fix the things we can and get this grand old American experience of ours back on track and to rebuild this middle class, to rebuild this opportunity in society, to restore this American dream that has become a model for the world. And that is what I'm committed to. And I think we'd probably be remiss if I didn't say that it is an incredible struggle that we are in for the heart and soul of who we are and what we're here for. And it's one that has, in recent times, largely been consumed by money and big money. And as one who can tell you, you know, at this point, I've been back in the Congress now a little over 2 years and 2 months. And somewhere between $45 and $50 million have gone into that. Is that not obscene? But guess what? Political scientists study campaigns and elections. And they find that the one with the most money usually gets the most votes. That was not the democracy that our founders had intended by any measure whatsoever. When you get elected to Congress now, they tell you should spend 40 hours a week raising money. Why? Why? Well, because the one with the most money gets the most votes. There are exceptions to that. We've been outspent, but we had enough. You know, thanks to everybody. We have enough, or I wouldn't be standing here. That's just a hard and simple truth and a fact of life. But when people go to Washington, as one who went to Washington, you know, in the 70s, we went to work and we governed 5 days a week, and we got things done. Now they tell you should spend, both the Republicans and the Democrats, it's not a partisan issue, they tell you they should spend 30 hours a week across the street raising money on the telephone. They spend another 10 hours a week in fundraisers. Well, that's 40 hours. For me, it's a 7-hour trip one way there and back, one way, and so that's 14. Well, that's 54 hours when you haven't spent any time governing yet. Wow. Well, I don't mind telling you, I refuse to spend any time in the call centers across the street. And guess what? As a freshman, in the minority, I was ranked by the Sunshine Foundation as in the upper 10% of the most effective members of Congress. So, you know, you still can. If you walk away from the call centers across the street, I mean, for God's sakes, at this stage of my life, I did not want to go to Washington and become a professional telemarketer, dialing for dollars. But I got to tell you, the nature and the work of the Congress has changed dramatically as well. Everything used to come up under what we call open rules, and used to come up through the committee process. And everybody who had an idea had an opportunity to introduce it, argue it, and make a case for it, and have a vote on it. That seldom happens. anymore. Very seldom. But guess what? Every once in a while, they like to see what it was like in the good old days